to be with all of you tonight. I hope to offer something valuable and entertaining, both as we go along. I guess I should introduce myself a little bit. I have a history of teaching Scrum. I've taught Scrum at Scale. And when I was getting ready for that, Scrum Inc. asked us to put together a slide that would be a set of pictures, right? So here's those pictures that kind of describe a little bit about me. I'm not going to go very long on the stuff, but just so you kind of know who I am or have some idea about me. I've written 3 books on organizational change. These are the 3 books right here. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I tend to, I have a history of organizing conferences. So this Give Thanks for Scrum event we have every year, the week of Thanksgiving in America, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. This is a picture of me as a much younger man, and this is what people do when they become my age. They actually present pictures of themselves that are not accurate descriptions or depictions of reality. So that's what that is right there. This is the OpenSpace Agility diagram, the so-called big picture, which I'll show you a little bit later on. You can click around. Here's Jeff Sutherland in a big open space seating. I'm a big open space fan. I've been a champion for open space for a long time inside Agile or Agile work. And we do that through Agile Boston. We do the Give Thanks for Scrum event. I live on a lake, a little lake in Connecticut. It's outside of New Haven between New York and Boston. There's some pictures of how it looks, some incredible sundowns here, and it's a beautiful place to kayak. Some people say I look like Donald Sutherland. I don't really believe that's true, but I think it's important for me to call that out, that people do say that about me sometimes. So there's a little bit about me. What I'd like to do now is offer an agenda for the next, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes or so, and introduce OpenSpace Agility, with the goal being that you leave with some resources and things that you can use, including knowledge that you pick up during this call, and that maybe you'll give it a try where you're working now. So what I plan to do is tell a little story about how all this started. And then I'm going to ask you a challenge question. How will you engage the people that are involved in your transformation work? Are we good with the audio?
A chili concoction in there if you want that.
Or can you mute everyone, and aside from Daniel?
Yeah, everyone.
People can unmute as needed, but I know people have other stuff going on.
That's cool. Then I'm going to show you a couple of videos. One of them is a actual client of Dan LaFave, who's here, and one is from an executive at Nuance Communications, who recently purchased by Microsoft, and I did these events for him. Oh, there we go again. So I'll show a couple of videos and we'll discuss how it works, and I'll take a bunch of questions. So, a brief introduction, a couple of vids, a little bit of an explanation, and then some questions. How's that sound? The goal being you should be able to leave here and do further study and take a shot at this. Okay, so let me tell you the story now. It was like 2010, 2011, and I was working at a company in Boston, in Cambridge, and I actually thought I was doing the best work, coaching work of my life at the time. I had been involved in coaching for about 4 years at that point, 5 years. And after the morning was finished on one of the days where I was working at this company, I went outside to get some lunch out of one of the, there were some food trucks that were outside. It was a nice day. I went outside, took my lunch, got a little fresh air, came back in, washed my hands in the men's washroom. No one else was in there. I was washing my hands. And this Russian architect came into the bathroom, and he started washing his hands. And his name was Anatoly. And I said, "Hey, Anatoly, how's it going?" I kind of looked at him through the mirror because I was washing my hands. And he kind of stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, with a thick Russian accent, he said, "Oh, you want to know how I'm doing?" And I said, "Yeah, how are you doing?" And he goes, just like this: "Agile sucks, and so do you." Just like that. I looked in the mirror, my face was all red. And I stopped and I just said, why? What is this? And he grabbed the paper towel out of the paper dispenser. He started mopping up his hands a little bit. And he goes, this agile stuff. He goes, nobody cares what I think, what I feel, what I want. Nobody asks me anything. And I've got a lot to say. And then he balled up the paper into a very neat ball, and he very precisely flung it into the trash. And in a thick Russian accent, he said, "So have a very nice day, Daniel. Goodbye." And he walked out. And then the door, I could hear the door creak and shut. And it was just me looking at myself in the mirror with the water running. This guy just told me off. And that was the day that I had my pivot. That was the day that I had to evaluate what I was doing and why I was doing it. And that was the day that I learned to understand that I was perceived as an extension of authority who was pushing things on people. And I thought I was doing the best work of my life at the time. So imagine the dark night of the soul that I went through there. So I kept it to myself. I thought about it for about 3 days. And I started to pay attention to what I was doing. And then what we did with that particular engagement was we ended it with an OpenSpace event. The last day of my engagement, which was a few months later, we did an OpenSpace event. The CEO of the company was the sponsor. He invited everyone. Everyone didn't have to go to it. One of the big executives was notably absent, and everyone noticed that. But the CEO behaved in a beautiful way the whole day, supporting the event and the people and the discussions and the truth telling and everything else. And I came away from that saying, I've been a real fool about this. I should have started this engagement in OpenSpace, not just ended it in OpenSpace. And then I endeavored to look around for a client that I could find who'd be willing to start the engagement in OpenSpace and end it in OpenSpace. And I found that client. And we did this before and after OpenSpace thing. And it was a huge success. It was a little bumpy along the way, but it was a huge success. So how many people have ever been involved in an OpenSpace meeting event? Show of hands. Not very many people. If you're not showing your video now, it'd be good if you did, just to kind of, let me know. Or you could put it in the chat if you want. You don't have to show your vid if you don't want to. OpenSpace event experience people have had? No, not very much. Well, this is what it looks like. This is the timeline of an OpenSpace event, okay? So this is time, or this is the depiction of time. This is leadership preparation, where we get ready for the event. And this is the opening circle, okay? This is where everyone sits in a circle. And by the way, that circle, it would be looking like this right here. This is seating for about 300 people in a big circle, right? It would look like that. Okay. And the meeting has a blank agenda that's on the wall. These are times, like 1 o'clock. Yes. Hello.
Whatever you tried to show us, we couldn't see.
Oh, you couldn't see it? All right, let me show you again. Can you see that now?
Hold on, still black. I see a bunch of books.
Yeah, so see this right here?
Okay.
That's a big circle that's set up for 300 people who are all going to be sitting in a circle when the event starts, facing
Okay.
each other, and that's sort of the epic look of how these meetings go. Okay, so that's represented right here. That's the opening circle, and then we get the meeting open, and then we put agenda items on the wall. So in the A space, the B space, and the C space, there'd be 3 different things going on in this time slot. So at each time slot, this one, that one, the other one, there's 3 things going on in this depiction, right? And then we go through that together like this, and then we have a closing circle. During the day, a book of proceedings is generated by the people who do these small sessions, and that book of proceedings becomes jacked into decisions and action planning, okay, for the next go forward, say 3 months or so, right? So that's OpenSpace. That's the timeline of OpenSpace in a nutshell. That's what one day of OpenSpace looks like. Leadership preparation, an opening circle, small sessions, a closing circle, and then proceedings, which is a written document, comes out of all these small sessions. So there'd be 15 things in this book, and then that becomes input into an action process and deciding process. Okay, so any questions on that meeting format that I can answer before we go forward?
Who decides on the topics?
You do. There's a theme that's named. It's like the attractor. It answers the why of why you want to go to the event. So the meeting might be Agile. What do we want Agile to solve? Or Agile, how are we going to do this in our company? Or PI planning ? Or whatever it is that you're facing as a challenge. That becomes the theme and the thing that pulls everyone together. But you can make a topic, you can make a session about anything you want. And at one of my open spaces about bringing Agile to a large company, this guy gets up and goes, my session is why Scrum can never, ever work in our company. My session is why Scrum can't work here. I'll be over there in the B space at 2 o'clock. And he did that session. He got quite a few people there. So that's the nature of OpenSpace. A question from Isaiah is what is the time box for a discussion? The sessions are typically 1 hour. In this depiction of OpenSpace, we're looking at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. So this is an afternoon type event where there was 5 sessions from 1 to 5. This probably started right after lunch, and then everyone came into the hall and we got going. Right, that's the idea there. So you decide the session, and then you also decide what sessions you want to attend. If you want to attend any sessions, nobody can make you do anything in OpenSpace. In fact, one of the primary characteristics of OpenSpace is that the entire event is optional. You're not required to attend. Only attend if the theme is something you deeply care about. So OpenSpace has a way of attracting people that have a sense of passion and responsibility around the theme, and that's the whole intent of the event. Can I take another question about OpenSpace and how it works, what it's good for, what the timeline's all about? Does anyone have a question?
I will ask probably maybe the elephant in the room. What have you done during COVID?
Well, OpenSpace actually translates very well to the online environment. I use a tool called Welo.space, which is a sort of a 3-dimensional space for OpenSpace. It's an improvement over plain Zoom, and I use that, and I can put that in the email that I send to Barbara later and stuff, so you can get that. I don't want to go looking for it now or whatever, but I'll send it, and you can use it, and it works extremely well for OpenSpace Online.
Great.
See, OpenSpace doesn't really, as long as the spirit of openness is present, it doesn't matter where it is. It can be online, it can be in a big space, it can be in a small space. But you need a leader conditions where this can take place. Okay. There's a question. How is OpenSpace different than Lean Coffee? Lean Coffee, I would say, is a tabletop version of OpenSpace for 14 or fewer people. If you have more than 14, 16 people, you can move to an OpenSpace format. But Lean Coffee is really a mini tabletop version of OpenSpace, and it's a great little format when you have less than 16, 14 people. Yeah. Can I take another question around OpenSpace before we continue? And I'm going to just hold this up to stimulate some thinking and some thought.
So
Yeah.
I think I probably been to one, but they called it something else. It was called an unconference.
Yes. Yes. So OpenSpace was developed in 1985 or so. And then lighter versions of OpenSpace were developed. One of them was the unconference, which you just talked about. And another one is called the bar camp. And these are like open space events where the agenda is dynamically generated, but the cohesion of the people is much lower. They're not as committed to each other as they would be in an organization. Open space is often done inside Agile conferences. However, the themes are usually, not that binding or attractive to people. They don't really trigger people the way themes inside an organization might. And they don't have this family meeting quality or feeling like open space in an organization has. When you have open space in an organization, it's very different than open space in a conference. So I should probably give some of the starting requirements of open space. You want to have a problem that no one person has the solution to, but the crowd probably has it. You could probably tease it out through collective intelligence. You could probably tease out a solution. You want the whole mess to be near the edge of chaos. A highly complex situation. We should have solved this and addressed it a long time ago. That's a third requirement of open spaces, that we want a decision time of yesterday, right? You want to have high potential for conflict, where everyone has an opinion, where everyone cares, where there's a sense of passion and responsibility around the topic, right? So these are the starting conditions for a great open space. Now, these conditions actually are usually present in every Agile adoption. People are confused, people are worried, people are not sure what's going on, they don't know what their role is, they don't know what we're doing next, they don't know why we're doing this thing. So Agile conferences actually create a great setup for the use of open space. So can I take one more question maybe before I go to the next phase of this conversation in description? We're good for now on questions? Okay, good. All right, so this is what OpenSpace Agility looks like. Each circle here represents an open space meeting event, and this timeline is not 1 day, it's 45 to 90 days, okay? So we open an open space. This is what we call OST1. We do the same leadership preparation over here on this side for this event right here. We do the event, and then there's 45 to 90 days of experimentation, iteration, inspection, and adaptation. Okay, so we take the proceedings from this event, and here's the blown up version of that event, and here's the proceedings. We take those proceedings and we make decisions and actions for the next 45 to 90 days as a group, led by the leadership team. Okay, then we do those things, and then we have an open space again in 45 to 90 days where we inspect what just happened, and we go again with planning, just like we did here. Okay, so this has the potential to transform your transformation. Okay, what I'd like to do is show you a video now. a brief video. I want to tell you a story about it. The executive, Jake OLeary at Nuance, was promoting and promulgating 10 core values to change the culture of the company. And he hit a kind of wall with his mandate of these 10 core values. So this went on for about a year, and then there was low engagement in the program. People weren't excited about it, and he kind of hit a wall. He had experienced OpenSpace in a public conference, and internally he experienced a 3-hour OpenSpace event with the leadership system, the leadership group, and they solved a problem in 3 hours that had taken them over 6 months to discuss and never resolve. So when he had that experience where they solved a 6-month problem in 3 hours, he's like, you know what? I want to do this for my culture program. Global was 900 all over the world: India, Europe, East and West Coast of the United States. We did 8 open spaces. 3 of them were online. 5 of them were face-to-face. I did most of those events, and I had a friend do one in India. And here the executive tells his story. Now, this was a very command and control-y kind of a person, but he was very, very quick to learn things, this fellow Jake. And he learned really quick. He called me after the first OpenSpace events and says, oh my God, the feedback on this is unbelievable. I'm glad I made this bet, and I hope the next one is just as good, and it better be, basically, is what he said, right? And then when the second one hit, he was like, wow, you know, thank you. Now, this dude learned really, really fast about this stuff. And I want you to see his testimony. So I'm gonna play that for you now. It's a 2-minute video, and it gives you an idea of what's possible. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to share it. I'm going to share the sound. I'm going to optimize the vid. And here's the pic. And can you see that?
Yes.
All right. Now we're going to hear the story from Jake OLeary. Now, this guy insisted on the theme being a certain thing. He didn't want to crowdsource the theme or get it from the group. I warned him about the risks of that. And then we went and did it, and a whole bunch of sessions came out that had nothing to do with the theme. You know, that's the nature of open spaces. People are going to say what they want to say and do what they need to do. Let's listen now to Jake's testimony. 900 people globally are under the span of his authority. Here we go.
We're in Burlington, Massachusetts. You're at Nuance Communications. My name's Jake OLeary. I run an R&D organization that's just over 900 people globally. We produce AI, speech, virtual assistants, and other capabilities. A little over a year ago, we started a journey of redefining our culture. I saw that we got to a point where our success and progress started to come to a bit of a halt. And I just so happened to crash into the open space concept, attending an event. Obviously, culture takes a long time to manifest and change within an organization. The light bulb just went on that in open space as a way to drive this cultural transformation, to create the culture that we're looking for. And from the moment we did it, everyone was engaged and it just worked out. It was positive. I think people were surprised. I was surprised, to be honest with you. The moment that we got past the open circle, the moment that the board started to fill up and people started to submit topics, and then we started to see what I consider healthy topics and engagement was there, I immediately, obviously, I felt some sense of relief. And then by the wrap-up circle, at the end of the event, and after having to attend it personally, hearing people's closing comments, it turned to me in terms of happiness and joy. It was a success, and it was a success in that here was a new approach to solving problems and bringing people together to collaborate and share ideas. And this new approach, yielded benefit. The people that participated in it saw value. The people that participated in it contributed. And I then started to build more champions for this open space idea ultimately. And with each open space event, and as each leader sat through those events, one after the next, I kept hearing about the success stories, and it just repeated itself each and every event. That was the moment I knew we had something special. And so you had to kind of embrace the fact that in this situation, let the organization lead the way forward and let leaders kind of rise up to drive things forward. It's extremely important not just to show the organization that leadership cares, leadership's present, leadership's just as engaged, but I actually think it's critically important for the leader themselves.
So that's an idea of what's possible, and the things that, the kind of thing that could happen in your company. Now, there's big ass open space. That's the meeting format and the formal event with a sponsor, with a facilitator, where people are invited into the event. But open space isn't actually the star of the show. The star of the show is the invited approach, where people are asked to come in and participate and to speak their mind about how we can improve. That's actually the secret sauce. So I want to show another video, very quickly. It's just a couple minutes, and it's actually a fellow named Eddie Wilkinson from Bendix. And Eddie Wilkinson actually created OpenSpace inside his Scrum and Scale implementation. He didn't use the formal meeting format, but the spirit of the thing was there. And he explained how he, basically delegated to people who he thought were influencers and people who could get the thing done to move improvement forward in the company using Scrum and Scale, and how that kind of petered out. And how he opened up the executive action team meeting of his coach, Dan Lefebvre, who's here tonight and can probably speak about this, and if you ask him a question or two before or after, during or after the meeting. Eddie Wilkinson was completely shocked at the power of volunteer participation. He opened up the executive action team under Dan's guidance and allowed observers to come and see the executive action team's work. And from there, they would discuss impediments, and he would ask, once the impediment was clearly defined, the problem was clearly defined, if anyone in the group would like to help to get rid of the impediment, to manifest improvement. And over a period of about a year, he grew his volunteer champions from like 15 people, 25 people, 40 people, got up to over 80 people. And he tells a very convincing story in this video. So it's a 6-minute vid, but I'm gonna cut it to 3 minutes. So, you can catch the main parts of it. And it's quite a story that he tells. So I'm gonna show this now, and listen carefully to his testimony as an executive leader in a very, very large company. This guy really, I think, was very fortunate and blessed to have Dan Lefebvre as his coach. Let's go and hear what he has to say. Can you see that right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. It's about 3 minutes of testimony. Another executive, not theory, the real deal. Let's hear what he has to say.
Our normal approach for organizational change management was to identify a lot of our change agents in the company and go grab their help and put them on a team to help drive change. So we did that, and we looked at all of our key influential leadership, and even informal leaders, and put them on a team to help us drive change. And we noticed half of them were thoroughly engaged, the other half were waiting to be told what to do, and a mixture of degree of commitment started to dwindle over time. So we had a team of probably 35 people engaged at first, and maybe 15 would come to a meeting. So we started looking at a different way to try to drive organizational change management and using more of an agile approach. And that's when invitational leadership became so interesting to us. So we set up a small coalition team, small volunteer coalition team. Dan Lefebvre was one of the people that helped us think through that concept. and decided to let that coalition team start soliciting volunteers to decide how to help us drive the Agile transformation. In one of our sprint reviews, we asked for volunteers. Anyone interested in forming a team and working on that topic, sign up. We had a whole lot of people signed up. So we started a team to go work over reducing approvals to be more efficient and trying to get things done. Then we had another topic came up. Next thing you know, we went from 15 to 12 people that dropped to 6 or 8 that didn't really want to be there, but they would come to a meeting, to 12, 15, and now over 85 volunteers on all these different teams, giving results, extending our capacity to drive change in a way that was pretty impressive for us. It was exciting to watch. We wanted to increase our capacity by 25%. We increased it by more than 50%.
Now, this advice is especially important. So listen and watch this.
I honestly believe that if we don't learn and adapt how to work more remotely, and also recognize that the employees that are younger generations that's coming into our work, they expect more transparency. They expect honesty. They expect to be doing something that's for a cause, that feels like it matters, and it feels like it makes a difference. They're not as concerned about having a career at 25 years at a place, and I think that's not new. All of you know that already. But they are definitely concerned about wanting to know they can be effective, knowing that they can make a difference. And I believe if you constantly put them in a situation that says, we want you stretched all the time, sure, but they also need a path to succeed. And if you put them in situations where you're not giving them what they need to succeed, more so than ever, they can leave faster, quicker, and will be invited to other places much more rapidly.
So there you go. Couple of executives, one using formal open space, another one using the spirit of open space through the mechanism of invitation to engage people in a very big way. So Barbara, how much more time do we have? Are you present?
We have anywhere up to, I would say, 20 minutes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do now is pause long enough to take a few questions about those vids, if you have them. And then I'll go a little bit further and I'll explain some of the resources that are in the chat and invite you to consider coming to the class at the end of the month. Who's got a question for me about those executives? Or to Dan Lefebvre, who is really the expert on Eddie Wilkinson and guided him as the executive coach there. No question?
I can ask. What were some of the challenges that they were trying to solve for? Like, what are some of the more specific things that they were looking at to do?
Yeah, well, I'll give the answer about Jake OLeary at Nuance, and then maybe Dan, you could give the details on Eddie at Bendix. Jake was looking to revitalize and reinvigorate his culture change program, where he was promulgating 10 core values through the company. And of course, he was not using the invited approach, so people were kind of going along with it because it was delegated. Delegations don't generate the kind of impact, or in particular, the kind of feedback that's required to get a big impact. Agile runs on feedback. Invitations generate a tremendous amount of feedback in a way that delegations cannot. So that was the context of Jake OLeary. And then Dan, you want to discuss a little bit about the picture at Bendix?
Sure. Well, they had a transformation backlog with lots of issues. One of the biggest ones, the one that he mentioned in there, was that to get approval for purchasing something took like 3 different steps. So when you first get the project approved, you had a budget to buy stuff. So you think you'd just be able to go get whatever material you needed. Turned out that if you needed to go buy stuff, you had to go for another approval. And then if it was over a certain amount, you had to go for a third approval. And all these approvals just delayed the project. Okay, so the question that he put out to the organization is how can we streamline that process? How do we get to fewer approvals? And he got a set of volunteers to work the process and got it down to basically one approval. If the project got approved, then from that point on, all you needed was the product owner's approval. So that was one of the things he kind of worked on. Another set of volunteers were working on their whole product development lifecycle, which was waterfall, lots of different meetings and review meetings and things like that. And again, for agile projects, how do we streamline that? And they reduced it to basically most of the information came from sprint reviews, and only when you got to the a big go no go would it go to a review where everyone would get involved. But for the most part, all the other documents that need to be reviewed were already approved through the sprint reviews that happened up to that point. So again, streamlining the whole process. So so things like that, and they've had, I think, 10 different volunteer projects to streamline and make basically their product delivery and their organization more effective.
Thank you, Dan. Importantly, they weren't using OpenSpace events at Bendix, but the spirit of openness was very, very present in the way that the execution was done. So you don't necessarily need the meeting. What you really need to focus on is the invited approach. So we use this meeting structure as a kind of template or a kind of scaffolding to bring that openness on, okay? This is a one-day meeting. It could be as little as half a day. And then we do 2 of those meetings in a 45 to 90-day window. And what we're really doing is we're creating a story of the transformation in chapters, right? So this is like chapter 1. And then after this one, when we go again, that's like chapter 2, okay? And what this is going to do is allow people to find their place. Many of you are doing agile transformations. How do you include the managers in that? I mean, I don't want you to answer the question right away, but the agile industry as a whole has not answered that question very well. When you use OpenSpace, the signal is people are valued over their role. We'll find a place for everyone. We're moving to a new way of working, right? Managers are triggered by Agile. Architects are triggered by Agile. Project managers are triggered by Agile. Why? Because if you bring on something like Scrum, what you're actually doing is you're changing the way decisions are made. Now, we all know, if we've worked in corporations, that when they start to edge someone out of their job, it starts by reducing their decision rights and their responsibility in their role. When you start doing that without a clear explanation of why, and without reiterating that people are valued, you're going to trigger people and they're going to resist. If Doug Itkin is a executive with 40 direct and indirect reports, he's going to send a very clear message that he doesn't like the Agile stuff. And then everyone else in his organization is going to be lukewarm on the Agile stuff. So we better get Douglas in. The way we're going to get him in is by bringing in a process where we're going to talk about it. Okay, we're going to put the company's interests first because that's what's going to serve everyone, right? And then we're going to do that in iterations. I want you to notice that in the middle here, it says experimentation, iteration. Those are agile approaches to learning. Those are agile approaches to process. That's what we're bringing on when we bring on iterative OpenSpace. You know, SAFe has PI planning. PI planning is arguably iterative whole group process. It's the heart and soul of SAFe. And it's probably the greatest thing about it. Okay. Now, the PI planning is not in, you can't opt out of PI planning. So you are voluntold to go to PI planning, and you are expected to make a commitment at PI planning, and that's going to be, that has potential for weaponization. Okay, so currently I'm working in a large, well-known software brand that you use, and I'm in one division of that company, and there's 40 teams, and we are piloting initially with 4 teams, and here's how we did it. We went out to the 40 teams and we described what the goal of the pilot is, what the rules of the pilot are, how they're going to track progress, what we're going to track for progress and feedback, right? And we invited 4 teams to come in and volunteer with their stakeholders. And we defined 6 measurement criteria. 4 of them came from the Scrum Scale guide: value delivery, quality, sustainability, and productivity. The Scrum Scale guide says at a minimum, you need to measure those things. Then we added predictability of process and planning quality. So 6 things all together. When we got the teams together, and I just had the call today, I got my confirmation from the executive team that the teams themselves will come up with the measurement criteria in the 6 dimensions, and that the executives ultimately hold the decision rights, but they want that input from the teams. And I am going to strongly advocate that the input from the teams should be honored, that they are choosing the measurement criteria for the pilot. Now, when you do this, what you're doing is you're creating 3 perceived senses in people: a sense of control, a sense of progress, because we know how we're measured, and a sense of belonging, because we're all agreeing to the rules of that game. Okay, so these things are associated with wellness, well-being, good psychological health, not just at the individual level, but at the group level. So when people have a sense of where the levers are, and they get to make some decisions about how we're measured, and they get to decide if they even want to be in the pilot, you know what that's going to do? That's going to jack up and amplify engagement, and we're going to have a very, very successful pilot. Why? Because people are passionate and have a sense of responsibility, and they're engaged because they're authors of the change, not just passive participants in whatever Jake says. You understand? So I hope I've conveyed some of that, the spirit of that to you. This can take many forms. OpenSpace meetings are a great way to start. I'm teaching the combined OpenSpace Agility and OpenSpace Technology class. It starts the week of January 31. I put in the chat an almost half-price discount for anybody who wants to come to that class from Agile, Rhode Island. I put the code in there. It's AgileRI as one word. Also in the chat are a bunch of links to resources. So there's a brochure. There's also a scalable big picture that you can scale to any size and print out. There's slide decks in there, and there's other resources that will help you to discuss OpenSpace Agility in your own company. If you're doing a Agile transformation and you've gone for more than a year and you've done it in the traditional way, I can pretty much guarantee you that you're starting to lose altitude. So if that's your company, this can be brought in a way to engage people. It's important to understand that OpenSpace Agility is not a framework. It's a model for engaging people in your framework. So you use this with Scrum Scale, you use this with SAFe, you use this with whatever it is you're bringing on. Okay, you're going to bring change in small waves that people have a sense of what's going on, and they're going to experience these feelings: perceived sense of control, perceived sense of progress and a perceived sense of membership and belonging in what's going on. Dan Lefebvre and I have done this for years in the companies that we've served. You heard from the executives. That wasn't theory. Those were real executives with their job on the line who used these techniques to get what they wanted in terms of improvement in value delivery quality. What I'd like to do now is pause and just take a few questions, or if you have a comment or a concern about anything that was presented here. I'll send a few more links that I mentioned through the talk to Barbara and just make sure those get distributed to you. And is there anyone here who's got a question or wants to make a comment or engage in a conversation about this stuff?
I put something in the chat. Just curious how OpenSpace aligns with like a team retrospective. Is OpenSpace just at a larger scale? Because a lot of teams are doing retrospectives all the time. Is it just a different focus? Could you use the same kind of structure within retrospective?
That is a very astute insight that you've got there. I've been doing this since, well, it's formulated in 2012. So I've been doing this now for 10 years. And recently, the past 3 years or so, what we've been doing is we've been bringing OpenSpace, iterative OpenSpace, OSA, into the retrospective process, because all the organizations are scaling, right? Teams have dependencies. They've got these hairball of systems that are, just crushing in their dependencies. And a lot of times teams are working from the same backlog under the same product owner. So if you're using like large scale Scrum or even Scrum at scale, you might have several teams under one backlog with one PO. Those teams are having retrospectives, and those teams are related. So there's already budget for retrospective. The language is already there. Everyone understands the process and they're using it. You don't have to ask for budget or authorization to bring on a group retrospective every 3 or 4 iterations. So what I've been doing quietly, and it works awesome, is you don't ask for any kind of authorization. You just, every 3rd or 4th iteration, the teams, they do their own retrospectives, and then they, in the morning say, and then in the afternoon, they come together and they have what I would call a group retro. It's really a group prospective looking forward and a retrospective looking back, where they're going to discuss their dependencies, they're going to discuss the impediment list, they're going to create a plan for going forward, and it's going to be extremely strong. So what happens is the proceedings come out of that, right? And then they use that as that's the plan for how the 4 teams are going to resolve and address dependencies on a go forward in the next couple of 3 or 4 iterations. So we've been quietly incorporating OSA and OpenSpace into the retrospective process. We call it a group retro. And everyone just says, okay, no problem. Retrospective, check. And that's how we're bringing it in without a lot of new language. And then when the executives see it and they come in to the event, they're like, this is like totally amazing. Like you heard Jake say, he was totally joyful about everything. They're like, this is totally amazing. What do you call this? And now you're having that conversation. Right. And oh, by the way, that group retro is optional for the teams. They don't have to go to it. So there you go. The number one, while I'm talking about this, I want to bring up the topic of persuasion. Persuasion is actually a soft form of manipulation. You're trying to elicit a response from someone and make them believe that it's their idea, right? That's persuasion, right? Like I've got a car to sell you here. Let me show you, we would never knowingly use invitation to manipulate people. We're not going to be doing that. That builds resentment. Nobody wants that. So we want the passionate, responsible people showing up. And just like Eddie Wilkinson said, just ask them if they'll help. and a lot of times they will. So, you know, when you start to get into this invitation stuff, which is actually very deep, you start to realize you're nibbling around the edges of persuasion. So you need to use invitation in an ethical way, where you would never knowingly manipulate people with an invitation. Let people make up their own mind. And oh, by the way, when about 15 or 20% of the people are on board with the transformation, you can declare victory, because they will sweep everyone else along with their totally what's the word I'm looking for? I was going to say infectious, but that's the wrong term. The enthusiasm that they have, the rest will just be swept along by the incredible enthusiasm and passion for what's happening. And you saw it with Eddie Wilkinson. You saw it, you heard it in the tone of his voice, and you saw it in the spirit of what he was saying. He was totally enthused and jazzed about the results that he got. He was actually shocked, right? So I think we're near the end of our time. I think I started at 17 past and it's 16 past now. So maybe take one more question. And then if you look in the chat, you know, you've got the resources there. You can just grab those links, save them for yourself. And you know, that's going to download PDFs for you in PowerPoint. I hope that you'll consider coming to the class. There's 40% off. I think I defined 3 or 4 tickets at 40% off. So it's a huge discount for this group. And I'm happy to, you know, it's an honor to be here tonight. And I hope that I've helped you